Hey, Patrick Moran here, host now formerly of what was known as the Moran-Alytics Podcast. And I got a little announcement that, for me at least anyway, is exciting. The short version, I've decided to rebrand my podcast. It has now been out there for a little over 2 years, 200 plus episodes in. The Moran-Alytics Podcast will now be known as Talking Buffalo Podcast. And just give me a quick minute here. I'm going to explain to you exactly why and what that means for the podcast going forward. First things first on why I'm changing the name and the brand. Look, I could give you some fancy, drawn out, elaborate explanation, but the bottom line, I just didn't like the name Moran-Alytics Podcast anymore. Now, originally, this was a blog, Moran-Alytics.com. My buddy Tone Bucks came up with the name Moran-Alytics originally, which is obviously a wordplay on my last name. I liked it. I used it. About a year into doing a blog, I decided to start a podcast. Kept the name because I wanted to keep the following that I had built up. But sure enough, over time, I started to not like the name anymore. It was a pain in the ass to explain to people, Moran-Alytics Podcast, exactly what that meant, what the podcast was all about for people who didn't already know. I had to put a hyphen in between Moran and Alytics, which made it a lot more difficult to find through search engines, stuff like that. So those are the biggest reasons why I've been looking for quite a while now to change the name up. So speaking of changing it up, what does that mean for the podcast going forward? Well, obviously the name says everything that you need to know already about the podcast. When you hear Talking Buffalo Podcast, you already know what it's going to be focused on. Not much is really going to change in terms of the structure and the production of anything, but I'm going to be focusing even more so now than ever on Buffalo, but not just exclusively on Buffalo sports. So of course, it's always going to be the biggest part of the podcast. It's going to be a sports first podcast. That's not going to change. But I have had on non-sports Buffalo guests on before. People like Erie County Executive Mark Polenkars, news media people like Melissa Holmes, Mary Alice Demler, Ashley Rowe, just to name a couple. And I'm going to have some more of that as well as episodes that are going to feature newsmakers and business leaders in Buffalo. Obviously, I also have some national guests on when the opportunity presents itself. I mean, I'd be stupid not to do that. But now more than ever, this podcast is going to focus primarily on my hometown of Buffalo, New York. So to summarize, Talking Buffalo Podcast, mostly the same pod with a different name. Podcast is still going to drop on Tuesdays and Fridays, just like before. If you've already subscribed on one of the major podcasting platforms out there, you literally don't need to do anything different. The RSS feed that distributes it, that's not changed at all. I'm going to start having some fun news segments, some regular features on the pod as well. Hopefully you'll enjoy that. And oh yeah, the intro, a tune that I'm sure vintage Buffalonians who've been around for a while, you'll surely recognize it. I even went to the creator of it to get legal permission too, by the way. So again, going to combine a lot of the old elements of the podcast with some new stuff as well. And hopefully that's going to be a lot of fun. I also wanted to add that I'm going to start producing a lot more content on our YouTube channel. Of course, that's also now called Talking Buffalo Podcast. And again, if you already were subscribed to the Moran-Alytics channel on YouTube, I just switched the name over. You don't need to do anything at all. Anyway, more highlight clips from current and past interviews up there. Going to have a lot, and I mean a lot more original audio content that's posted only on that YouTube channel. Not going to hear it anywhere else, not even the podcast. I'm talking some single topic content, some random thoughts on happenings going around, definitely a few regular features that I'm going to develop there, including at some point live streaming and maybe even some video podcasts a little bit down the road. So if you haven't done so already, type in Talking Buffalo Podcast on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to that as well. Last thing here, look, for me personally at least, this is exciting. Very much looking forward to doing it. It's going to connect me even more so to my hometown. I could do more things with the podcast and its branding this way. Pretty pumped to get the ball rolling. So on that note, subscribe to the podcast if you have not done so already. Also hit up the YouTube page as well. And you're going to be hearing a lot more again from me very soon.
I'll catch you on the flippity flip. Bye.